morning, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Coffee and Sports in the Morning. I am your host for the day 7. With me is the man, the myth, the legend. If you know better, you got to know better. What's up, man? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, man. Appreciate you jumping in. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Let's get into it.
Man, huge news story out of yesterday. I think it's obviously the main thing that everybody's been talking about. John Harbaugh parting ways with the Baltimore Ravens after 18 years, one Super Bowl victory. Was 2012, if I recall correctly. A lot coming out about this. What are your initial thoughts on the end of the Harbaugh tenure in Baltimore?
It's tough because 18 years tenured. And look, by any metrics, it's been a successful run. 12 years in the playoffs, he brought them a Super Bowl. But look, the main goal is the main goal: win Super Bowls. This team, if you look at what it was the last 3 years, it seems to be going in the wrong direction. They're getting further away from that goal. And while everything isn't on him in terms of fumbles or interceptions or injuries, he is the head coach. He is the guy. And he's the head coach while they have a two-time MVP who's in his prime, clearly one of the best players in football, and they overachieved. Ultimately, someone's going to take the brunt of that blame. I find it interesting, though, Seven, from this standpoint. If Baltimore wins, are we not probably having the same exact conversation about Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly, I'm not sold on the fact that his tenure doesn't end depending on how they do in the playoffs. Because if they don't show up and at least make it interesting, we've got questionable performance out of the Steelers for the last 5-10 years anyway. We've talked about it before. The standard with programs like Pittsburgh and so on used to be a lot higher. And we see some of these guys and Tomlin and Harbaugh and even Sean McDermott in Buffalo. The standard has been higher, but they're getting away with substandard performance. So I think for this, it was only a matter of time to me. And again, I still think that Tomlin could be on the hot seat depending on how they play, how they show up next week.
100%. I think if Pittsburgh loses next week, I don't care if they play well. If they lose, won't it still be the same thing? Oh, one and done again, one and done. You know what I mean? Like in a weird way, Mike Tomlin gets to play one more week than John Harbaugh, but he could end up facing the same fate. Yeah. Look, in sports, it's about wins and losses. Not what you did for me before, but what you did for me or have done for me lately. And John Harbaugh getting fired, to me, and I'm sure, Seven, you have your thoughts on this, is I think this is as much about Lamar Jackson as it is anything going forward.
I agree, and I think that parting ways with Harbaugh is the first step to keeping Lamar, and I think a lot of it comes back to Todd Monken, because the play calling has just been atrocious. And Harbaugh's refusal to intervene, and now reports that he was against parting ways with Todd Monken. To me, that shows that a change was needed just in general. And Baltimore recognized that. And I say kudos to the leadership in the front office in Baltimore for recognizing that a change was needed. And when Harbaugh refused to part ways with Todd Monken, they said, well, either he goes or you both go. And we got to where we got, because if he really did lose the locker room, like people are saying, I have to think, because of the way that he coaches and the typically the more players coach that he's appeared to be, his insistence on being behind Todd Monken instead of understanding that he's not the right guy for this type of offense that you need to run when you have guys like Derrick Henry, when you have Lamar Jackson under center, when you've got guys like Zay Flowers and DeAndre Hopkins and Isaiah Likely, this other talent, this Pro Bowl caliber offense, and you don't even make the playoffs. There has to be accountability. So I think that this is the start. If you want to keep Lamar Jackson and him not demand a trade, this is the first step.
And you brought up earlier, before the show, the talk about him losing the locker room, and that could happen. Look, you're tenured somewhere 15 or more years. Um, at some point, the message can get stale, and
Oh, for sure.
I think sometimes when you're tenured somewhere for a long time, you become a little bit rigid in your thinking too. Like, this is my program, and that's the way it's going to be. We don't change my program. It goes back to what you said about Monken. Like, you're too rigid not to be open to the fact Monken's not the guy, and we need a play caller more imaginative, a play caller that's going to play to the strengths of the talent that we have. Like, Derrick Henry just came shy of rushing for 2,000 yards last year, and I'm wondering why he didn't get more carries this year. Like, he should have been just shy of 2,000 yards again this year. Like,
At least.
the fact that he's defying time for a running back at this stage of his career, use that. When all else fails, it's nice to have a 250-pound running back that can slow things down. If your defense isn't playing well, then your offense can be your best defense because of your run game, right? Like, it settles your offense down. To not use Derrick Henry like they didn't many times, even that last game we just watched, 6 carries in the second half, that doesn't make sense. That's negligence. And the fact that John Harbaugh didn't step in and go, "Hey, Todd, look, we got to get Derrick some more carries or do something," like. And I just think that kind of rigidity, that's part of the reason why they moved on from him. And I'm not saying John Harbaugh isn't a good coach and he won't get another job quickly, because I'm sure he will. But for the Ravens' future going forward, and more importantly, like you said, to retain the services of your Pro Bowl quarterback, because you can tell that relationship was fractured, you had to move on from Harbaugh.
Absolutely. And I think that so now let me ask you this. As we look at we move forward, we start looking at potential options for who's going to take over in Baltimore. I feel like one of the most important things that you have to do if you're the Baltimore front office in trying to find Harbaugh's replacement is Lamar has to have a seat in the interview room. I think that not only does he have to be there and be present and see what this process looks like and see what these candidates look like, in the interview process, but he's got to have a seat at the table with a voice. Because if he's not happy with the choice, then you've just wasted your time in getting rid of Harbaugh, because you're still going to lose your Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, and then the rest of your offense is going to fall apart shortly after. What do you think?
No, I think you're spot on. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be heavily involved in the coaching decision, the coaching search. We always talk about this: marry the coach to the quarterback. Well, the quarterback's already in place, so the quarterback needs a coach that he can look at and go, "I trust this guy, his vision and what he wants. He fits me." I think that's very important going forward, because it's funny we didn't get on this. You can fire John Harbaugh, but your hire better be an upgrade. It better be a clear upgrade. If you go out and get a retread, somebody who's not as good a coach or similar, then why fire John Harbaugh? Like, it better be a clear upgrade and somebody that brings some energy, some stability, and new ideas into that locker room. And look, if Lamar's not feeling him, then that's not your guy. I think it's clearly got to be somebody that Lamar Jackson looks at and go, "I think we see things the same. I think we can vibe off each other. I like this coach's vision." I think that's clearly going to be important in this coaching search. But I thought about that when I heard that Harbaugh got fired. I said, yeah, I understand why you would make the move, but you better make sure the guy you hire is in fact an actual upgrade. Like, this is no shade on Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy's a good coach. He's had a good career, but he's a safe pick. He's not what I wouldn't call him an upgrade over John Harbaugh. I would say, if anything, he's a downgrade. So it has to be someone that is a clear upgrade.
I no, I 100% agree with that. And that's our thing. We were talking about this on the sports report on Monday night. Obviously, Harbaugh hadn't been fired yet, but one of the things that, because the question at that point was, why does Harbaugh still have a job? And it was brought up that one of the things you have to look at in making this change is, who are your options going to be? What is the coaching pool going to look at? And are you going to be able to come away with somebody that's going to be a better fit than who you have now? And so I think that it's a relevant question. And so, that leads us into, now that they've actually pulled this trigger, who is the best fit? Who do you think is going to be able to wow Lamar, build a system that's going to feature this dual threat running tandem that nobody else in the NFL has access to, with their group of individuals, and make a Super Bowl caliber team that can actually show the potential of the talent that they have on this roster? Who's going to be that right fit?
Um, I don't know who the right fit is name wise, but I would say if I'm part of that group that's going to be involved in that coaching search, doing those interviews, I'm looking for an offensive minded coach. I'm looking for an offensive minded coach um, who can find different ways to utilize Lamar Jackson's skill set along with Derrick Henry's skill set, the playmaking ability of Zay Flowers. Like, I want an offensive genius. And it doesn't have to be some guy that's been in the league 25, 30 years. If it's a younger coach who's got a knack for offense, who's bringing in new ideas and got a reputation for getting the best out of his players, then there's nothing wrong with that. I would say this: I don't want to recycle. Like, I understand there's some established coaches who've been solid coaches, but if you recycle again, are you upgrading from John Harbaugh? You know what I mean? Like, or do you run the risk of bringing in an established coach who wants to change Lamar Jackson? Oh, you know what, Lamar, we don't want you to run as much. We want you to stay in the pocket. You have to it has to be a coach open to the fact that the strength of Lamar Jackson is the dual threat ability. And it's got to be somebody that's willing to use that and get the most out of Lamar Jackson, get the most out of Derrick Henry, again, who's defying time. I'm going to give Derrick Henry the ball until he shows me he can no longer go through the hole and go 60 yards up the field and manhandle DBs. They don't have a lack of talent. I would say that Todd Monken was not that imaginative of a play caller. And so when I'm looking for my head coach, I need my head coach not only to be an offensive minded head coach, I need his OC to be locked in with him. Like, they should be of one mind, right? What can we do to make life better and easier for Lamar Jackson?
I really agree with that, because there should be a lot of unity between the head coach, the OC, and Lamar Jackson in a way that, because one of the things that's frustrated me about the issues that Baltimore has had is, we've all seen, it's clear that there should have been better play calling. They were running when they should have been passing, and vice versa. Like, and Lamar wasn't doing a lot of changing at the line. And I think that's a lot of, like, it was pointed out, we were talking about this on Monday. Somebody pointed out in the chat that in that big drive, I believe it was in the third quarter, that really showed that the Steelers were still in that game. Aaron Rodgers called the entire drive from the line. And it was one of the huge things that helped them, find that success in that game. Lamar Jackson doesn't do that very often. And part of me wonders if up to this point, he has not been empowered to make those calls and use what he sees when he's at the line to make those adjustments. So are we going to, I feel like one of the most important things that the Ravens have to do is find a coach that's going to tell Lamar, look, you're standing right there. You see it better than I do. Make the call. And get him to make those adjustments. Are they covering for that run? switch to a pass and hit Zay Flowers or Isaiah Likely in the flat, get that check down, move on to the next play if you have to. Don't eat a sack or eat a 3-yard loss because Derrick Henry gets tackled behind the line. The Raven, and these things happening is why everybody's been so critical of Todd Monken, because that's the result that we're getting on these plays. Some of this has to go on Lamar. You've got to build him up. He should be calling plays like this on a regular basis. Any of the other big name quarterbacks, Josh Allen makes changes at the line. Patrick Mahomes makes changes at the line. Aaron Rodgers makes changes at the line. It goes right on down the list. I have seen Kyler Murray make changes at the line. I don't know how, because he couldn't see over it, but I've seen him do it. So if all of these other quarterbacks can do this consistently, why has Lamar Jackson not been empowered, encouraged, and almost really required to make these adjustments like any other quarterback should do? Because they're the general on the field for that reason.
You bring up a good point. Here's the thing I've often wondered about Lamar. Is that a weakness? Is he not really good at diagnosing plays? Like, if the defense is in zone, can he recognize when the safety drops down and they press up that now they're in man, that they switch? Like, is that he's not empowered, or he's not very good at reading defenses or things like that? And I think it's probably a little bit of both. I don't think it's a strength. Now, they can empower him, but he's got to get more in his playbook and repetition and get better at it, because you're right. Play comes in and Lamar walks up to the line of scrimmage, and no matter what the defense is doing, he calls the play. Rather than look and go, oh, the safety just dropped down. I need to get out of this. The middle of the field is going to be open. Those kind of adjustments. I don't know if that's a strength. I think it's something that like, you're a Chiefs fan, so you've been kind of spoiled because you've got one of those guys that can walk up to the line and go, oh, so you guys want to get into it? You want to do a 3-4? You think I'm going towards the middle? No, I'm going over the top. Like, Mahomes is one of those guys, you mentioned it, along with Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and others, even Dak. They can recognize and diagnose plays or diagnose defenses. I'm not sure that's a Lamar Jackson strength. I don't know if it ever was. And while he's still a young man, I believe he's 28. I'm not sure how much you can change that. You can try, but if it's not a strength, then there's a reason why he doesn't change plays.
And I mean, and that's a relevant question. But my thing is so I understand that very few quarterbacks coming out of college can read defenses. It's not something they've taught. It's not something they were required to do, because making those adjustments on the fly like that is not something that you see very often at the college level, even at the programs where they run pro style offenses. Like CJ Stroud, when he was at Ohio State, wasn't changing calls at the line. So I understand coming out of college. I get that. And everybody's always shocked. Oh, a quarterback says I didn't know how to read defenses. Of course they didn't. They didn't have to. But we're now Lamar Jackson, like you said, he's like 28. We're coming up on 10 years in the league for Lamar. He should be able to read a defense. And so if he can't, that puts me that actually makes me want to question Harbaugh more. Why does he not have the ability to read a defense? Why has he not been given those tools? Because your quarterback absolutely should be able to read a defense. Your backup quarterback should be able to, your scout team quarterback should understand how to read a defense. And to not have that tool would really make me more question what Monken and Harbaugh have been doing with Lamar, because that's absolutely something that your starting quarterback, and a quarterback of Lamar Jackson's caliber. And I say that as a Chiefs fan who rags on Lamar all the time. I respect his talent. I rag on results. I'm not like the New Orleans Saints. I don't look past the results. I look at the results.
Right.
And so if that's the case, how is that possible?
What's interesting
that's
is
the question.
But think about this. His backup, Huntley, right? Isn't Huntley sort of like a watered down version of Lamar? So, you know what I mean? Like what Monken does with Huntley is pretty much what he did with Lamar. I guess the question is like this is about what your OC and your quarterback coaches are doing with your quarterbacks, because if none of your quarterbacks can recognize different coverages and read defenses, what are you guys doing there? What kind of program are you running?
It's a relevant question because and it sounds like you're along with me. Like every NFL quarterback should have the ability to read this. Like it's and I understand that there are going to be times where, because especially when you're going up against a really good DC like Steve Spagnuolo, he disguises coverages all the time. But even within that, there are tendencies that you could recognize that I'm sure every other offensive coordinator has been able to at least get a basis of understanding when you're facing Steve Spagnuolo. Just because it looks like man or zone before the snap doesn't mean that. These are some things you can look for that are going to show you some differences. He should have these tools in his pocket at all times. And a good coach is gonna prepare that. Okay. And so Gene, what we're talking about is how we haven't seen Lamar make a lot of changes on the fly like we do see other quarterbacks, and how, why is that not happening? Is it he can't read defenses? Were they just not empowering him? And in that this next coach needing to do that, because Lamar's got to make those adjustments. There is a point of this where that onus is on Lamar, and I think it's one of the reasons why there's such a debate about his talent, because he's not making those adjustments. I think it's an important tool for a quarterback to have. And let's see, like you said, yeah, I can read defenses from the exactly. That's where it becomes frustrating with how what we're seeing out of Lamar at times, because he's not making adjustments on the fly. He's not seeing that safety pull down. He's not seeing, okay, this is man, we were expecting zone. We need to make an adjustment, whether it's where the ball is, who the ball is going to, are we switching to a run? What are we doing? And I think that's been the biggest flaw of the Ravens offense. The whole scheme and what Todd Monken's been doing is that lack of adjustment. And that next coach and OC tandem needs to make sure that changes, because you shouldn't have Derrick Henry only getting the ball 6 times in the second half when they're up, 5 times in the second half when they're up, or in 5 times in the fourth quarter when they're up by double digits. Like, these are continuous problems that Baltimore's had. That's why I wasn't surprised that something had to happen. I'm honestly like, and I want to get your input on this, because circling back to the reports that part of the reason why they parted ways was because of Harbaugh being unwilling to entertain parting ways with Todd Monken. That actually makes me question the Harbaugh's coaching, because it's clear to pretty much everybody outside the organization, obviously based on reports that he lost the locker room, it's clear to the players, Todd Monken is not that guy's OC. And, we've talked about it in the wire to wire chat, that he's one of the least desirable OCs in the last decade, as far as how he has done his job. So, like, knowing that, does that make you see Harbaugh differently? Does that make you kind of question his ability as a coach now, because he's not willing, he's loyal to the person, he's not looking at the results, he's clearly looking past them?
Yeah, I think that does say something, because you're the head coach. You can intercede. You can talk to your OC and go, look, Todd, we've got what my problem is that for Harbaugh to just go, I'm not giving up my guy. You know what I mean? Like, but your guy doesn't have the confidence of your Pro Bowl quarterback. Your
Right.
guy. Look, my thing is, if the Ravens defense is as inconsistent as we've known it to be, even in that game, what's the best way to protect a lead? You run the football, you run some clock, right? When you run the football, the clock moves. And I'm not complaining about Derrick Henry's carries. I'm just pointing out that a guy who's known to get stronger as the game goes on only got 6 carries. And to your point, there's a couple of plays where it's 3rd and short, And everybody in the building knows it's third and short. And you go to hand it to Derrick Henry, and Pittsburgh's already on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And he
Right.
stopped at the line or behind the line. Like, you can't audible out of that. You're not allowed. Like, I think there was a disconnect between Lamar Jackson and the OC. And look, I'm not even saying Lamar's like thinking about himself. I think Lamar is probably thinking, why aren't we giving Derrick Henry more carries? Why aren't we balancing out our offense more? And when you have that kind of disconnect, you're wondering, when does the head coach step in? John Harbaugh doesn't step in.
Well, and you know, and you're right, but also Gene brings up another point that I don't think, and he's right, that doesn't get talked about enough in this in this matchup and in this season, is the performance of the Ravens defense, which I feel like definitely had to have an impact on the decision, because, well, you know, when we look at what the defense did, they only got to Aaron Rodgers twice, and that was only for a total of 4 yards of loss. There wasn't, I mean, they had, what was it? There wasn't any interceptions gotten by Baltimore, but Lamar Jackson threw a pick. We didn't have, there was only 3 tackles for loss in the entire game by the Baltimore defense. And obviously 2 of those were sacks. So, no, I'm sorry. So a total of 5 tackles for loss if you include the 2 sacks. That's very underperforming as far as that's concerned. And then obviously the special teams. We're now in our second year in a row where we're having issues with Baltimore special teams. Justin Tunger really underperformed last year. Was stressed, probably wasn't getting the massages he needed. He probably should have worked on that a little bit more aggressively to take care of himself. Sorry, that joke was just sitting there. I had to. And then we see Tyler Luke come in this year, a rookie. And obviously that's stressful for anybody, but putting that on a rookie and it coming down to the last play of the season. What part of how the defense and special teams performed this year do you think had an impact on them deciding to walk away from John Harbaugh?
Well, the defense was the worst defense in football, maybe the first half of the season. They got better in the second half, but they still underachieved. When you look at all the names that are on that side of the football, all the money they invested in the defense, it completely underachieved. And Kyle Hamilton going out, that greatly impacted what they could do for the rest of that game. But when they sit down with John Harbaugh, they didn't go, well, we understand, John, that Kyle Hamilton got hurt, so, you know, we get it. You know, they don't do that, right? What they're going to say is, you underachieved again. Like, that's why we're to this point, because what we're not going to say is, well, if he makes the field goal, they win. That 100%. But he didn't. You know what I mean? And we started the show off with the goal. The main thing is the main thing. You're playing for Super Bowls, and the Ravens are like, I think they won 13 games, they won 12 games, or maybe it was the other way around. But this year they won 8 games. And I know we're getting into the John Harbaugh thing, and we're digging into that situation. But like we kind of mentioned earlier, the difference between John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin is a field goal. Because I don't know that, if, like I said, if that field goal gets made, we're not having this, well, Mike Tomlin did good, he had a good tenure with Pittsburgh. Like, he's not fired, right? That's
right.
That's how tedious their tenures are, because neither one of them, while they've had successes, neither one of them has won a Super Bowl in a minute. Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in a minute.
Right.
And if they lose this weekend, we're gonna be right back where we were before. Why wouldn't he end up being unemployed?
You see, and for me, like, I feel like Mike Tomlin, under most teams, Mike Tomlin has at least been on the hot seat for the last decade. At least he should have been, because just having a winning season isn't enough. Because like look at Baltimore. If we just look at Baltimore for the last 10 seasons, the 2015 season through the 2025 season, we had 5-11, 8-8, 9-7. Then we get to 2018. Now we have some true playoff seasons where we go 10-6, 14-2, 11-5, and then back down to 8-9 and 21, and then 10-7, 13-4, 12-5, and then this year 8-9. Like there hasn't been consistency with results. We're losing a lot in the wild card of the divisional round. Only been to the conference championship one time since they won the Super Bowl in 2012. Now, yes, that's more than what the Cowboys have done, but we're not trying to use the bare minimum as the reference point here. We're trying to get results. And the all-around inconsistency of the Ravens since that Super Bowl win in 2012, a reasonable team is going to have higher standards than that, especially with the talent level that the Ravens have had. And then we look at the Steelers. I feel like Mike Tomlin has gotten away with murder on quite a few years with the results that they've had. And I appreciate the Rooney family being loyal. I think that's something because we talk so often about how many coaches we've seen that have gotten fired really before they actually had the chance to develop. Like, how bad was it? And like, was it really time to move on from Raheem Morris? Was it really time to move on from Pete Carroll? Like, these guys were very early in tenure. They weren't really given a true shot to build what they could have done as a head coach. Whereas when we flip and we look at guys like Tomlin, we look at guys like Harbaugh, there's much more of a body of work to reference. And it's very clear that the formula isn't working. And so it baffles me. It truly baffles me that Tomlin still has a job, because I think in most other situations, the coach has gone before this.
I don't disagree to a point, but there is a difference between Harbaugh and Tomlin. It's a huge difference. Tomlin hasn't ever been able to replace his Pro Bowl quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, whereas Harbaugh has arguably one of the 5 best players in all of football in his prime, and he hadn't been able to win with him. I think Tomlin's had multiple quarterback changes. Like right now, the viability of the Pittsburgh Steelers hinges on a 42-year-old quarterback. Like that's not
Right.
I'm just saying. So that there is some differences. One of them is a guy that at the peak of his position, and the other one's had a musical chair as a quarterback since they lost Big Ben. And so, and I'm not making excuses because it's a results-driven league. And I still feel like, should the Steelers lose this week, I don't think they don't like to make coaching changes in Pittsburgh. You know this. If they lose, I don't think it's a lock that Mike Tomlin gets fired. But do they have conversations? I think they do. I think they do, because at some point you're going to say, look, yeah, you keep having winning seasons and we've made the playoffs, but when's the last time you've won a playoff game?
And I think that's a relevant question, because like it comes back to some organizations just have a higher standard. You know, this isn't the Arizona Cardinals. This isn't the Raiders, where the standard is you're getting to the conference championship, you're getting to the Super Bowl. The bit more in storied programs, more historic programs have a higher standard. In New England, because of Bill Belichick, if you're not constantly getting deep into the playoffs, you're not doing good enough. Now that Andy Reid has set the tone in Kansas City, if you're not making a deep run, you're not doing good enough. That's why Matt Nagy is not going to be back next year, because it was very clear very quickly that Matt Nagy is not good enough to handle this, and the standard is simply higher. Sure, you can go to the Giants, or if you go 9-8, everybody's like, "Oh, that's an improvement." You know, you managed to do that after losing Cam Scatterbo. Like, if the Giants went 9-8, everybody would be happy right now.
Okay.
But the standard is simply different. You know, when your organization has won 5 Super Bowls, when you have the history of the Steelers have within the NFL, The bar is simply higher, and you are selling your organization short when you don't recognize that. It's like how the Yankees have been in baseball since they won the World Series in 2009. They are not meeting the standard that organization should have, which is championship or bust every year. And it's not to say that if you don't make the championship, you immediately fire the coach, but there has to be development, there has to be improvement, there has to be adjustment so that you can work towards that. Tomlin hasn't done that as much as he should have, I feel like. And I get the quarterback issues, but there hasn't been a lot of adjustment in the front office either. And so I think some of this has to come back on the Rooney family because, again, I appreciate loyalty, but at the same time, I work in sales. And my supervisor, if I'm underperforming, my supervisor works with me. We talk about goals. We set, we readjust, we reestablish what the standards should be. If I'm not meeting that, my job is on the line. How many times have the Steelers reestablished that what that standard should be? Not lowering the bar, going back and saying, hey, we need to get back on track because this is the goal. And we're right back here. You or I, if we keep performing like that, we're losing our job. So I think some of this goes on Tomlin, but also some of it, like you said, with quarterback issues, has to go to the front office. Why are we spending so much time on Kenny Pickett? How are we getting lost in Justin Fields? How are we getting stuck on these situations when we should be working towards a better choice? There have been better quarterbacks that were on the market that they did not pursue effectively. I'm not saying they didn't at all because we don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but effectively pursue a better choice to where your season is not hinging on a 42-year-old quarterback that spends his summers down in South America doing ayahuasca in a mud hut.
That's a good point. Look, the front office plays its own role in this. And to get back to John Harbaugh real quick, my thing is this too. How does this work? Because when you hire the next guy, and everybody wants to point out how much talent the Ravens have on both sides of the football. Well, what happens if you hire the next guy and he wins 9 games and they don't go on a deep playoff run? How much grace does he get? What if you go 2 years and he gives you 2 10-win seasons, but you don't go anywhere? He getting fired? You know what I mean? Like, because the whole point is I'm bringing in this guy and he's supposed to better our situation. But if he comes in with all the talent they have and they don't win anything, he's not going to get 18 years, if you know what I'm saying.
No, and I think you're right. But also when we look at because we look at 18 years, we put that, see, so that would have been, okay, so Harbaugh's first year was in 2008. But when we look at, when we go back, we look at what Harbaugh did, let's say in his first 5 seasons. They were in the playoffs for the 5 years. They won a Super Bowl. They made it to the conference championship 3 of those 5 years. Those are results. But if you look at when we look now, I feel like you have to have a plan that it's going to that it might take a couple of years to really get back to it. Now, if we're looking at 2 seasons in, we're only seeing 9-10 wins for each year. We're not seeing a production as far as yards, touchdowns. We're seeing the defense regress, those type of things. Then I can see evaluating it. But you do I think there is a point where you have to be reasonable and understand that, you're almost kind of getting a Lego set without instructions, and you have to figure out what you're supposed to build. And you can go in with a plan, but it's that old saying, everybody's got plans until they get punched in the mouth. So I think there has to be some reasonable adjustment time for getting hit in the mouth. But in the same thing, like if I see, coach comes in and they go 5-11 or 5-12 in their second season, man, it's going to be hard for me to justify keeping that coach.
And you're also you're also coming into a situation that you pointed out earlier. You do have Likely at tight end. You do have Mark Andrews. So you have two talented tight ends, even though they have different skill sets. You've got Zay Flowers. You've got Derrick Henry, who's defying time. And you've got the most devastating dual threat quarterback in NFL history. You're not walking into a situation that's a rebuild.
Right.
So they're not. You're not going to get it's a rebuild, so we understand why you went. You won 8 games. Nah, we win 8 games last year. That's why we fired the last guy, and he was here 18 years. You can't go 8-9.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get a lot of grace if you go 8-9 in year 1. Year 2 becomes make or break.
Oh no, I agree completely, and that's why the coaching search is going to be important. I do think that if you get the right head coach, it should still be an offensive minded head coach. So I want to say that, but if you have a solid offensive minded head coach, then bringing in an offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury or even Mike McCarthy as an OC, where their focus is simply on that spot, I think that you're going to get, you would see some positive results, but you can't just bring in Eric Bieniemy as the head coach and Kubiak as your offensive coordinator and expect to get anything out of it. Like there's got to be some choices there that are actually going to build towards success, and then you can kind of you can move on from there. But that tandem is going to be crucial. I feel like that's going to make or break. And I get Lamar's frustration because this is his career on the line. And the difference between him being Donovan McNabb of the modern day or him getting to sit in the same conversation as guys like Patrick Mahomes because of the results that he's able to achieve under the new head coach.
Look, I think that's facts. This is so much about Lamar's career. Obviously you have team goals, but as an individual, he knows when it's all said and done, he wants to be mentioned in a certain conversation. He wants to be in a stratosphere with a certain group of quarterback. And I've been watching football since I was a kid, and there's only one quarterback that is mentioned with the other ones, and he never won a Super Bowl, and that's because we recognize he's the greatest thrower of the football ever, and that's Dan Marino.
Right.
But Lamar's not going to get that grace. They're going to go, this guy's a 2-time. He might win 3 MVPs, but if he never gets to the Super Bowl, he'll be remembered as a great talent, entertaining player. He's not going to go down as one of the all-time great he'll go, it's interesting. He might go down as an all-time great player. I don't think he's going to go down as an all-time great quarterback.
I agree. And I think that and honestly, like even me, the reason that I would still put Marino over Lamar is Marino at least made a Super Bowl. And I think that really for Lamar, he has to at least get there. And yes, that is on him, but that is more on the head coaches and stuff like that, because he is still just the quarterback. There is still only so much that he can do. He can't make the guys catch the ball correctly. He can't make sure that every play call is correct. He has nothing to do with the defense. Those are all things that are outside of his control.
Or special teams.
Or special teams. Exactly. Right. Well, so how do you if you're Lamar, the thing that you do is you advocate for yourself as far as who the coach is going to be. You advocate for yourself as far as, making sure that it's communicated about what you're seeing and the way the play calling should be and stuff like that. But then you kind of just have to let it be. And you kind of just have to put your head down, get your nose to the grindstone and work and try to create results as best as possible. But if he doesn't make a Super Bowl, at least make a Super Bowl, I don't even know that you can put him in the Hall of Fame at this point. I do not see where he's had a Hall of Fame career yet.
I think he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I don't know that anybody's won 2 MVPs and never made the Hall of Fame. So yeah, I think he's going to get into the Hall of Fame. And I don't know his numbers. I don't have them right in front of me, but I think he's had multiple seasons where he's ran for over 1,000 yards. I'm assuming to go with probably 3,000 plus yards past. Like he's probably gonna get in the Hall of Fame because he's done things nobody's ever done before. But there's getting in the Hall of Fame, and then there's being at that table with a Mahomes and a Montana and a Brady. He won't be at that table if he can't get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think that's really where the issue comes into is because you're right to a point in the the two MVPs and getting into the Super Bowl. I think I'll give you that. You're right, but my question really for me is right now he has not put himself into a position where he is seen as, like you said, in that top tier with Brady and Mahomes and some of those other guys. And he has work to do to get into that realm. But if he doesn't get the right the right coaches, the right support, he's not. Because I just looked. He has 2 seasons. It was 2019 and 2020 were the only 2 seasons that he's rushed for over 1,000 yards. Now he does have outside of that, a couple of that are at or around 700,
Right.
and 800 and 900. Then this year was 350. And obviously he only played in 13 games. He was fighting injuries. So there are some, there are some caveats with that, but he has to have the right support. And I think that if you don't give him that, you're setting him up for failure. You're pushing the Ravens even closer into a full rebuild. So this coaching choice is going to be huge for them. I think it's going to make or break Lamar's career in Baltimore.
100%. And if they hire a guy and they go, this is the guy, he's an offensive guru and all those kind of things, and he gets in there and he's working with Lamar Jackson, but he finds out that there's certain things Lamar Jackson can't do, or he's more limited than, because I do think it impacts Lamar. Like Lamar wanted this change, but you know the line, be careful what you wish for. Well, now you've got the change. Now you've got the change. So outside of an injury, if Lamar's healthy, he needs to have a career year next year, right? Like, for sure. Like not just with them winning, but he needs to have a career year.
Well, but that's the thing though, is now we have to step back. We have to talk about that piece of it, because when you look at Lamar's career, he had 21 and 22. He only played 12 games. This year, he only played 13. So 3 of his, 2, 4, 6, 8 years. 3 of the 8 years that he has been a starting quarterback in the NFL, he has not played a full season. It's almost half. If when we look at other guys, like that's very similar to what Christian McCaffrey's done. We call Christian McCaffrey injury prone, but we don't say that about Lamar. He's got to stay healthy. I think that should be one of his ultimate goals for this season, is this next season, just to stay healthy. Give me 16, 17 games. Because
go ahead.
It's if not, because the questions about if Lamar has given up on his team in some of these situations. If he can stay healthy regardless of what's going on, just stay in there, grind it out, even if it's a tough adjustment for next season. I think it shows more for who he is as a person and a quarterback if he does that, than if, I've got a hangnail, I'm going to sit out for 3 games.
No, I get that. The downside of Lamar Jackson is what makes Lamar Jackson, what gives him that that fear factor that he puts in the defense, that might be ultimately his greatest hindrance too, though, because he's a running quarterback, not just a running quarterback that'll take off when he drops back, but they have designed runs. He's a running quarterback. In a lot of ways, he's a history making quarterback because he runs the football. He'll get 10, 12 carries a game. Now, he didn't do that this year because he was injured most of the year, but I think because of how he's used, um, I find it unlikely that he's going to ever play a 16, 17 games because he runs the football a lot. And the truth of the matter is, generally, guys that run the football as much as he does, they don't usually last that long. They usually get beat up and get worn down. Now, obviously, Cam is a good example, but Cam was also a bigger and easy target to hit. He was a huge man, and not nearly as elusive as Lamar. But I do think the OC could come in and you still want that dual threat, but he doesn't have to rush for 800 yards or 1,000 yards. I think you can put the fear in the defense and be a quarterback that runs for 450 yards by just extending a play or getting 6 yards and getting out of bounds. He's got to find a better way to protect himself if he wants to extend not just his season but his career.
So you're right about that. And I think and you're right. And I think that this is something that is completely missed because, like, Patrick Mahomes, as a Chiefs fan, I'll say this: we know that Patrick Mahomes is one of the most dynamic throwers and has the ability to extend plays in ways that we haven't seen before. Everybody's been so shocked by it. But let's take a look at the fact that, like, last year, we won't use this year as an example because he didn't play a full season. Last year, he only ran for 307 yards. The year before was 389. We had 358, 381, 308. But you have to have a spy on Patrick Mahomes because you know that if that containment breaks down and you've got everybody covered, but he's wide open, he will take off, and he has the footwork to extend it even more than you expect. So he makes teams respect him in that piece. Lamar Jackson can do the same thing, especially because he's getting older. To preserve the length of his career, everybody knows that Lamar can run. Now you can step back, take the time to make the right decision in the passing game or with the RPO or whatever, and use those other pieces because they're going to respect what you can do. But because of that, that's going to make it easier. You're not going to have your best receiver triple covered. He may only be double covered. Okay. Well, for Zay Flowers, if he's only double covered, that means he can just go up and get it. So now you high point the pass, and there you go. He's got to use those other tools because we shouldn't be sitting on stats where the more he throws, the higher their losing chance goes up. That should not be a thing that exists in Lamar Jackson's career. And I think I personally, I do blame Todd Monken for this right now. How Lamar adjusts with a new coach and what happens next will tell me if it's really Lamar or if it was Todd Monken, I feel like. But He's got to be more insistent on using those other pieces and only using the run when it's absolutely necessary, similar to what Mahomes and Josh Allen do, because if he doesn't make them respect the other pieces of his game, then he's going to be seen as one-dimensional.
That's a great point. And I think in many ways, a lot of fans look at Lamar Jackson, and we can use the word dual threat. But a lot of times you can tell by the way teams play against them, they're comfortable playing zone against the Ravens, right? Because they don't believe Lamar can pick you apart consistently. And I've seen him have big passing games because, like you said, he the fear of the run of him beating that first lane and there's a breakdown in your rush lanes and he destroys you. But against more disciplined defenses that challenge him, he's struggled at times. This new offensive coordinator in Lamar, they need to get in the lab as soon as the guy's hired. I know it's the offseason, but they need to get in the lab ASAP. They need to bond, get some continuity quickly, because I think that does matter going forward. If Lamar is indeed a big part of everything that's going on, it's incumbent upon him to come in with a running start going into next season with him and his new head coach and OC.
I agree. I agree. Okay, we have spent a lot of time talking about this. We had a couple of the things we wanted to dive into, so we'll hit it really quick on these other stuff. We saw multiple offensive and defensive coordinators sent packing the other day. Lions offensive coordinator Morton was sent home. Cliff Kingsbury and Witt are both out with the Commanders. Matt Eberflus was given his walking papers by the Cowboys. Any of these shocking to you?
None of them were shocking to me at all. None of them. I knew Washington was going to shed some bodies, but they're just out now cleaning house, and that's okay, right? Because they believe they've got their franchise quarterback in house, and I agree with them. And they believe that the guys that they had there didn't do him any favors. Even the Eberflus firing, it didn't shock me as much. I think Eberflus is good at what he does, but I don't think he's the best. He'll definitely get another job. Look, some of these guys, they're lifers. They'll get other jobs. But when you hear Eberflus' name come up, you know where he's not going. He ain't going to Baltimore.
No.
He's not going to ball. Like I can tell you where he's not going. So I don't know where he is going, but I'm sure someone's going to bring him aboard on their staff.
I wonder if some of Matt Eberflus's termination isn't because of the fallout with Micah Parsons. I think that there's part of that because I think he does hold some culpability in that. I don't think it's just about issues with Jerry Jones or with the front office or the coaching staff. I think because that's ultimately that relationship is Matt Eberflus's job, especially in a guy of Micah Parsons' caliber. So I definitely feel like he holds some culpability in that, and that could be part of the reason why he's now looking for another spot. But I agree with you. I think somebody's going to bring him onto their staff. I don't think it's going to be Baltimore. I happen to agree. I could see Arizona. Possibly even depending on who gets the head coaching job in Vegas. I could see him at the Raiders, but I don't think he's going to get Tennessee as a DC. I don't think he's going to get Baltimore. I don't think he's going to get the Commanders. I don't see those as viable options for him.
I like the Raiders.
I actually think that there's a lot that you can do with the Raiders if you're the right head coach. Ultimately, the big thing is going to be figuring out the quarterback situation because that's the hardest piece of that puzzle.
Right.
Can you go get, is there somebody in the draft that you really think you can build a team around? Which personally, with the options I see in this draft class, I don't think so. So are there any quarterbacks that are going to be on the market that you can make a move towards? And I don't know what that looks like. I'm not a GM. I'm even when I play Madden, I just kind of look at what's recommended because I'm not, I'm not that guy. But they've got to make some choices. And I think that there can be a lot of potential you have to build, but the hard part is with that program, you are facing three of the top, I would say 6 or 7 teams in the AFC twice a year. Agreed. So that's probably one of the hardest jobs to pick a good coach for. Like you would ideally want somebody like Harbaugh, but Harbaugh's not going to take a program that he has to completely rebuild. I think Tennessee or the Giants are going to be the best landing spots for Harbaugh because a lot of pieces are already there. You make some adjustments and you go. But we'll see what happens. Okay, Trey Young and his team, his agents are working on a trade. Any ideas where you think Trey Young goes?
I honestly, I don't have a clue. What I will say is I don't know any title contender that outside of maybe the Timberwolves that would make a trade for Trey Young. And even if the Timberwolves brought him in, it would be contingent on what Atlanta would want in return, right? And I don't think Trey Young's going to yield like this huge haul. No. Even though he's a talented guy, a gifted playmaker and scorer, he's not that easy to play with. And I've said this before, and I stand on it. He as talented as he is, if the mission is to win a title, he can't be your best player.
No, I agree. Well, I mean, when you look at, he's got this season and next season left on his contract, so you know, you could end up seeing somebody that tries to, you know, maybe grab him to finish out a season to sell some tickets and then just buy him out. And then he can kind of have a, you know, a refresher in the off season to kind of decide where he wants to go. But I just, with all of the talent that they've brought into Atlanta to work around him and the lack of success that they have, I think he's the problem. And so unless you get somebody that's going to be greedy and almost blind to that fact, like Phoenix, like Matt Ishbia has already shown that if he thinks it's going to work, even if it's, you know, whether it is or it isn't, is relevant. If he thinks that it could work and sell tickets, he's going to make that move. And I'm not saying this Phoenix has the pieces to make this trade or anything like that, but somebody with that mentality is probably who's going to do this. And I don't, like I said, I went with you. I don't think it's going to have the results you think. I don't think it's going to be a good thing for a title contending team. I don't think the cost is going to be adjustable. I think Atlanta is going to overinflate his value, and they're going to want multiple firsts or, you know, and starting players for a guy that's only got, you know, really 1 to 2 years left of control, 2 if you count this season,
right?
And doesn't have that closer ability that you would want out of a guy with that kind of value.
I think if he gets moved, I think he gets moved to, you know, one of the worst teams. Like, you know what I mean? Like it'll be Sacramento or something like that. Like he's not going to OKC, right?
No.
He's not going to the Spurs, and he's not going to Denver. We can go down the list. Like the only team that like I said that's in the West that's a contender that could use him is Minnesota, because they don't have shot creators. They got one shot creator, and it's Anthony Edwards. So everything they do is predicated off Anthony Edwards. So yes, Trae Young could serve a purpose in Minnesota, but I it's weird because he's talented, but again, he's a difficult player to build around because I don't even know if he's 6 feet tall. And he doesn't give you anything on the other side of the ball. He doesn't play defense at all. So Atlanta might value him and think he's worth 2 or 3 first-round picks. I don't think there's any good teams in the NBA that value him at that level. I don't know if there's even any. No, I won't say bad teams because bad teams make bad decisions. I'm sure teams like Sacramento or Washington would value him like that.
So I will say officially he's 6'2", but again, I don't think he's that tall. I really don't. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the good teams aren't going to value him the same way. But we'll see. All right, wrapping it up because I know we're a little over time. Really quick thoughts. The Thunder are 6-6 in their last 12 games. Is this just exhaustion from all of the foot to ass that they've been doing over the last season and a half? Is this, you know, what are your thoughts on how the Thunder have been over this last month?
2 things. One, remember, their core is a young core. And even though they're the defending champions, I think they're realizing just how hard it is to be repeat champions, right? Like, it's one thing to win it. Now you're the champs, you got to defend it, and everybody's after you. And I think they're learning that there will be adversity, there will be more challenges. So that mental wear and tear is getting to them. And I also think that the fact that the Spurs were able to beat them 3 times in 10 days, I think that was a mental thing. I think that I think that put some doubt into them, and it exposed some weaknesses in them. Like, they're an elite defense, and they get after you like nobody's business. But when you don't turn the ball over versus them and you play them even, their offense is really as high powered as people think. When you look at them, look at that roster construction, as talented as they are, they don't have a lot of great shooters. They have scorers. They don't have any pure shooting, and they've been exposed in that way. So I think there is an adjustment. I don't think there's any reason for panic. What it's just shown you is that they're not dominant. They're a great team, but they're not a dominant team. And I know early in the season the talk was, could they go 79-3 or something like that? Well, that's out the window. They're not doing that.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen. I think they just need to recalibrate. Like that. Remember, this is a really unique team because what Sam Presti has done is unprecedented. Because they're the defending champions, but they're gonna have a couple of picks in the lottery next year.
right.
They're built for success, even though they're going to some adversity now. I still think, barring a major injury, the path to the title, it still goes through OKC.
I think you're right, and I think this is more like you said, they're learning how hard it is to be that, because when you're the defending champ, I've seen this so much as a Chiefs fan recently, as much as Red Sox fan recently. When you have that when you have that much production and you are that good of a team, everybody is going to throw everything they can at you, the kitchen sink included. They're going to give you all the smoke. And so you got to take that step back. You got to take a deep breath and go, wait, we're the defending champs for a reason. We got to get back to what we're good at. We got to take that deep breath, one possession at a time, and not get so wrapped up in losing to the Spurs 3 times in 10 days. You've got a good game tonight. I think they play the Jazz tonight. They play the Jazz tonight. And the Jazz aren't anything special. They're not doing anything anytime soon. So you can use this as almost a tune-up game to get back into that rhythm that you should be in as you move on, because when you look at the Thunder schedule, like the next few games that they've got after the Jazz, they've got Memphis, and then Miami, San Antonio again, Houston, Miami, Cleveland. Like they should be able to get right and go into the month of February with a much better rhythm. And looking back at this, like, man, we just needed a breather. At least I would hope for them that's what's going to happen, because they can do it. It's just a matter of, can you settle in and look at the next game, not at the last game?
Agreed.
That's the question they had. Yeah. All right, man. We're a little bit over time. I love getting to work with you. Thank you so much for letting me come on with you today.
Appreciate you,
Any
man.
final thoughts?
No, great show. Appreciate the chat. We spent a lot of time on the Ravens, but you know what? When you fire a coach that's been in tenure for 18 years, there's a lot to talk about. So I really enjoyed the conversation, chopping it up with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here again. I appreciate you. We got a lot of great shows here at Wire to Wire Network. Every day, every evening, we've got shows hosted by intelligent individuals that love sharing their experience and their point of view with you. So definitely take a look and check out all of the shows that we have to offer. For my cohort, Mo, I am 7. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. We appreciate you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.